Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to our webinar series on recovery and resiliency on Main Street. Today's program is a COVID-19 check-in. Do my businesses have what they need for 2021? I'm Kimberly Parsons Whitaker. Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns that fuel our state's economy. Our mission is to assess, to educate, to convene, and to advocate to develop and grow our traditional downtowns, village centers, and urban mixed-use neighborhoods. Given the impact of and challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, our theme for programming this year is recovery and resiliency on Main Street. Today's program will focus on the economic impact of COVID and how we can support small businesses. Do my businesses have what they need for 2021 will feature Sadie Colcord, the Business Associate for Partnerships at AdvanceCT, Susie Beckman, Economic Development Director for the town of Old Saybrook, and Mary Dickerson, Development Planner for the town of Portland. We've asked them to share their thoughts and experiences in responding to crisis while also planning for recovery. Just a few short housekeeping notes. Today's session will run approximately 1 hour. Please feel free to type in any questions you have in the chat function as we go. We'll be monitoring the chat box, and our panelists will address questions when we get to Q&A at the end. A recording of today's session will be available on our website at ctmainstreet.org, as are all of our workshop archives. And you'll receive a brief evaluation in the next day or so. We greatly appreciate your input so that we can continue to improve these sessions. A note to planners, evaluations are required for AICP CM credits. We are grateful to our sponsors. Our educational programs, Main Street Forums for the 21st Century, are sponsored by Webster Bank, Avangrid, and Farmington Bank Community Foundation. Our corporate investors are M&T Bank, Capital for Change, People's United Bank, and Windsor Federal. Connecticut Main Street Center's founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. And our growth partners are Avangrid and the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office. And our AICP certification maintenance provider is Fitzgerald and Halliday, Inc. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our colleague, Sadie Colcord, Business Associate for Partnerships at AdvanceCT. Sadie.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thanks to all of you for joining us on this snowy morning. Very, very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day. So today we're going to talk about how we can best support our businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. As we're all sufficiently aware, it has been a challenging time for our businesses and our downtowns, and hoping that me and my colleagues, Mary and Susie, can provide some insights from our experience in the work that we've been doing. So with that, let's get right into it. So just a little bit about AdvanceCT, which is the organization that I work for. We are a private nonprofit organization that works to drive job creation and new capital investment in Connecticut through activities like business attraction, retention, and expansion. And we work a lot with municipalities and have worked with many of you, I'm sure, that are listening in today, just to ensure that your communities are prepared to welcome businesses and see the economic growth that you are looking for. So here's just brief bios for me, Susie, and Mary, and you'll get this deck, I believe, after the presentation. So feel free to look us up afterwards. So we have a number of learning objectives that we're hoping you'll take away from this session today. The questions that we're hoping to answer are: where is the Connecticut economy now since the start of the pandemic? How have towns been able to help their businesses adjust to the pandemic economy, and what support can towns provide to their businesses for the months ahead. So I want to take a few minutes right now to frame where we are as a state. We can't talk about economic development in 2020 without, of course, talking about the devastating impact that COVID-19 has had on many of our local economies. So in this section, I want to touch on a few data points that put this situation into perspective. And, this isn't the most fun or positive topic, unfortunately, to discuss, but, it is critical information so that we can better support and understand the needs of our businesses in weathering the storm over the difficult months ahead. So, as many of us are aware, COVID numbers have generally been getting worse over the past few months. And here you see Connecticut's rate of new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths going up through early December when I pulled this data. So in general, we're doing a little bit better than the country as a whole on these metrics, but that doesn't negate the horrible public health impacts that Connecticut has seen as a result of this virus. And as public health suffers, so too do our local businesses. So first, let's look at where we were in May as the governor implemented his first executive order with kind of the most, significant restrictions in terms of business closings. And so that was kind of the initial hit. So here you can see the state's total GDP for 2018 when, the economy was essentially normal. And on the left side of the screen. And so to the right of that, we see numbers from this year in May. So we see the proportion of total GDP held by the different types of businesses as they were either open or closed under the governor's initial economic shutdown starting in March, I believe. And so we see that about 43% of the economy, or about $106 billion of Connecticut's economy, was open and operating as normal. About 15%, or 38 billion, made the choice to close down. About 31%, or 77 billion, was doing remote work, and then about 10%, or 25 billion, were ordered to close through that initial executive order. So as you would expect, unemployment claims were higher for, those industries that were forced to close. And unfortunately, those public-facing businesses have a disproportionately higher share of employment and really got hit hard. So, and in terms of unemployment rate, we are somewhere in the middle on that rate relative to our peer states. So we're coming in at number 26 overall. However, we've come a long way, and you can see that unemployment claims have been steadily decreasing since the start of the pandemic, except for one small spike in July. And so, we also see here that claims are higher in 2020 than they were in 2019. And of course, that's to be expected as a result of the strained economy from the pandemic. So as we've all seen, COVID has had a disproportionate impact on many public-facing industries in particular. So in Connecticut, accommodation and food services jobs have taken a hit, with over 20,000 lost between February and October of this year. Healthcare and social assistance, as well as retail, fall after that in terms of the most jobs lost, both hovering around a little over 10,000 jobs lost. And oftentimes, these types of jobs are not as high paying as some others on this list. And so, this makes this pandemic particularly challenging for those who are already low income. So on this next slide, you can see the GDP numbers between Q2 of 2019 and Q2 of 2020. So I'm making a year over year comparison on Connecticut's GDP. So you can see that year over year, our GDP has gone down by over 8%, which is pretty significant. And looking at the unemployment rate on the right, between October of 2019 and October of 2020, we saw that rate climb from 3.8% to 6.1%, representing about a 60.5% change year over year between 2019 and 2020. So again, not the rosiest picture, but that is, unfortunately, the reality that our employees in Connecticut and our businesses are facing. So now let's focus on what Connecticut's businesses have to say about the impact of a contracting economy on their operations. So I pulled the data on your screen from a survey of Connecticut businesses that AdvanceCT released in October of this year. We had over 3,500 respondents from all over the state. And like my previous slides, the numbers paint an alarming picture. So since February, over 46% of respondents have reduced their employee base, and about 50% have reduced employee hours. Year over year, almost 80% have experienced some degree of revenue loss, and over 50% of respondents said in October that they may go out of business if economic conditions persist. And to wrap up this relatively depressing portion of the presentation, sorry about that, Connecticut's economic recovery since the first days of the pandemic has essentially been on par with that of the US. And while we pulled ahead a little bit in the summer and the early fall, our momentum has somewhat diminished because we've been seeing lately, increased negative public health outcomes. So that just kind of sets the stage for you all in terms of thinking about, the impacts that our businesses and our economy have experienced. And now let's get into the more, uplifting part of this presentation, which is, there's some great work that towns across the state and across the country have been doing. And we're highlighting today Mary and Susie from Portland and Old Saybrook, because they've been doing some great work with their towns. And so, we just wanted to showcase that there are great ways for you all to be supporting your businesses. So with that, I want to pass it to Susie. So Susie, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? We all set? Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the Economic Development Director in Old Saybrook. And Old Saybrook, for anyone who's not familiar with us, is a small town of 10,000 on the shoreline. We are very central in the shoreline, almost exactly in the center of the state, 2 hours from New York and 2 hours from Boston on the Amtrak train. So, and we're very pleased to have wonderful scenery around us. We're on where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound. So we're very fortunate. And it also means that we're a very tourism-based economy. So when the pandemic hit, we were spinning our wheels, like many of you, and trying to figure out how to support our businesses, how to support those who had lost jobs, and how, once things started to open up, how to begin to help our businesses again. And if you could move to the first screen there, Sadie, please. So the first thing we did was trying to figure out how to make people feel more like a community. And knowing that restaurants were allowed to do takeout, we were looking for ways to provide space for people to enjoy their food outside as the weather was getting warmer because the spring was coming. So in May, the very first thing we did was purchase 20 Adirondack chairs, plastic Adirondack chairs, $20 a piece. And it was a very simple concept. We bought 20 chairs. At the time, you could only group into groups of 5. So we separated them into 4 groups on the green. They were very colorful out on the green. And we found that people were using them immediately. And it was a way for people to congregate in a safe, socially distanced way because they could move the chairs. And we found people throughout the summer and into the fall were holding meetings out there. They were reconfiguring the chairs. They were putting them on the gazebo. So it was a very inexpensive, high impact, really, community project I would call it. And when we put them away for the season, we had a few people very unhappy to see them go, but we will be pulling them out again in the summer and as spring comes around again. So that was a very simple, very low cost project that people really, really liked. And then the other piece, which all other towns were working on, were zoning adjustments. As things changed, we were trying to roll with the changes and anticipate what was going on. So we have continued to work very closely, me, the zoning enforcement officer, our building official, our public health department, and our safety officials, to make sure that as businesses come up with their ideas on how they want to expand either outdoors or inside, whatever they might be doing to improve what they can to bring in clients, we're right there and responding as rapidly as possible and getting their permitting through within, many times within days. So that was something that we found was helpful for businesses. The response from businesses was very appreciative. And as we're looking forward into 2021, we're actually looking at how we might be able to leverage the governor's executive orders to expand what we wouldn't normally be able to do within our current zoning regulations. So we're looking at doing some pop-ups because, as we know, feet on the street are very important. And that's one of the things that our office focuses on. And we want to try to do arts and crafts pop-ups, pardon me. One of the hardest hit businesses in Old Saybrook has been the Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center. As you all know, the arts and culture has been hit along with tourism. They've taken the hardest hit during this entire pandemic. And what we were beginning to think about is arts and crafts. How do we let people know that Old Saybrook is an arts and crafts center, not just with the Kate, as we like to call the Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, but also with our annual Arts and Crafts Festival that had to be canceled last year. So we're beginning to think that we want to use Putnam's concept, really. We stole the concept, and maybe put some pop-ups together and create an arts and crafts center that we hope might evolve then into possibly filling some of our empty spaces with makerspace. So we have big ideas coming down the pike, and this, out of necessity, some of these ideas have come forward. Will you move to the next slide, Sadie, please? So one of the things that we have really been working on too is our partnerships with other organizations in town and our businesses. As a part-time economic development person, my resources are limited, and we have always worked very closely with our local Chamber of Commerce, but we have become even more collaborative than ever before in really sharing resources and supporting one another so that we can support the entire business community. So the Old Saybrook Chamber, along with support from the Economic Development Office, has done a great restaurant raffle for the holidays. And they were selling 2,000 tickets at $20 a pop, and they bought gift certificates at all 42 restaurants in Old Saybrook. So the grand prize is a $100 gift certificate to all 42 restaurants. And then the second prize is $50 gift certificates to all 42 restaurants. So it was a way to help support the restaurants by buying the gift certificates and then selling the raffle tickets. And they did sell out. Yesterday they sold out, and the drawing is on Friday. And then looking into 2021, last spring, the Chamber did a great takeout giveaway, which was a similar concept. They were buying gift certificates from various restaurants and raffling, or not raffling them all, but giving them away through a drawing every week. And we're talking about possibly rebooting that in the spring or maybe February, when things are, again, that's usually a quiet time, a more quiet time for our restaurants. So we're hoping to help them out through those winter months. The other thing we did was a contest, a gingerbread house decorating contest. And the concept here was that all ages and abilities could participate. It was something fun that people could do at home safely, socially distanced from anyone that's not in their immediate family. And all of those gingerbread houses were brought down to a bakery in town, and they are displayed in the window. So now they've created this wonderful window display of very festive, homemade gingerbread masterpieces, some of them. You can see mine there in the picture. That's Town Hall in Old Saybrook. And I have a great appreciation now for anyone who has ever built anything out of cookies and candy. But it's been well received. We've had over 20 entries. The display is wonderful. And we also turned it into a fundraiser for Old Saybrook Cares, which is an organization that came out of this pandemic. And it was partially the town, partially residents, and there's a committee that is raising money and giving away grants of $1,500 to households that have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. So there's a community support aspect to the gingerbread decorating house, as well as creating a reason to go out and take a look at the windows and hopefully get some feet on the street here in Old Saybrook. And then the other thing we've done is an advertising partnership with local businesses. In Old Saybrook, we have a very small marketing budget, and we have used it to do some geofencing advertising in the past 3 years. And it's been pretty successful. We've been testing it out. And this year, we wanted to expand that and give businesses an opportunity to buy into the geofencing advertising, which sometimes can be cost prohibitive for a small business. So for $200, we are sharing our ability to reach people through geofencing, and any business can buy in for $200 for a 4-week campaign using their own advertisements. You can see that we have the picture there is the Old Saybrook, our general shop local for the holidays advertisement. And then you can see the smaller ones are for some of the local businesses that partnered with us. So, and geofencing is amazing because you can really track how effective it is. So we've seen that these businesses have already had people going to their websites, clicking and going to their websites. And we can follow up with them and see if they were able to convert them into sales. Can you go to the next slide, Sadie? And then finally, I just wanted to go over some of the direct support that we have put together for our businesses and our community members. So the Chamber of Commerce put together an auction, again supported by the Economic Development Office, and they raised $13,000 and gave $1,000 grants directly to businesses that applied. That was back in June. There is also, the town was able to set up a PPE co-op. So the town has a way for businesses to purchase PPE at about a 30% discount, we've found, because we're using the town's purchasing power to purchase the PPE, and then we're passing along those savings to the businesses. So it did require upfront money from the town, but then the businesses are paying that money back when they're purchasing the PPE. And then for residents, I mentioned earlier, we have Old Saybrook Cares, which is the organization that is raising funds and then giving away $1,500 in grants to households that are in need. And so far they have, I have 30,000 plus in there, but actually they're closer to 100,000 plus has been raised and distributed. So we have a very generous community, and certainly appreciate so many people who have given to support our community members. And all of the money raised through the gingerbread contest is going to go to Old Saybrook Cares, because a component of the gingerbread contest, it has an online donate to vote function. So we've been able to raise some money through that. And then I just want to say for 2021, I did mention we're probably going to reboot the Great Takeout Giveaway to help support our restaurants through the winter months. And we're looking at the arts and crafts pop-ups. We're hoping that evolves into something that is makes Old Saybrook an arts and crafts center at some point. And then we are going to continue the geofencing partnerships when we do another campaign in the spring, try to remind people about coming to Old Saybrook. And that's where we are right now, Sadie.
Thanks. And now we can move along to Mary Dickerson from the town of Portland. Mary.
Thank you, Sadie. So our first cover slide here is the slogan that is painted along the Connecticut River, "Come on over." And that has been Portland's sign for going on 90 years now. And we have been a community, Sadie, I'll have you switch to the next slide. We have been a community that's very, very focused on tourism and welcoming outside guests to our community. You see that open flag. This is who we were pre-pandemic. We had a main street about 7 years ago. We completed a gateway makeover. We have public parking lots. Our shops had been taking off. Savvy Swap is a statewide recognized consignment shop. Manufacturing. So Standard Nap has purchased, or I guess partnered with a German firm. They are co-owned. And together they had expansion plans. And down below that, we have the Brownstone Exploration and Discovery Park that does about 100,000 tourism visits between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So that's a huge influx of people to our community. Beginning in May, the schools would do trips and the buses would come and the students would have a blast all day long. And on the weekends, they would go home and tell their parents how great it was. And on the weekends, the families would come back. So we were really tourism focused in the summer. In the center, in the bottom, you can see St. Clemens Castle. They did approximately 125 to 140 weddings a year. This was a huge number of guests coming in. Anywhere from 40 to 50,000 people would pass through St. Clemens in a year, meaning they passed through Portland. Next to that is one of our golf tournaments. Portland was host to anywhere from 7 to 10 annual golf tournaments. Some are biannual. We have 3 golf courses, Portland Golf Course, Portland Golf West, and Quarry Ridge. We also have 2 driving ranges. We have Chris Cody's Golf Shop, which is known across New England. And now we have the Northeast Performance Institute, which is a PGA level golf training center. So we were a very focused on the outdoors, focused on welcoming guests to our community. And we were a small main street. This is the Connecticut Main Street Center presentation. And we had really spent the last 12 years since the recession began creating vibrancy downtown. And these little shops had come back. We have some great little restaurants. We have some great little retail stores. And so when the pandemic hit, everything kind of ground to a halt. Sadie, I'll have you go to the next slide, please. So some of our pandemic response actions. I created a guide, and it was a financial assistance guide from the Portland Economic Development Department. And it was just a compilation of every program that was available. And all of our businesses know that guide came with personal support. Whether it was evenings or weekends, I did personal visits. We made sure that everybody had their applications ready to go. When PPP and EIDL went live, I worked with a number of businesses so they were ready at midnight to upload their applications so they could be the first applications in the pipeline. We're a small community. We're 9,400 people. So these aren't just my businesses. I've been in this role for 14 years. These are my friends. And in a pandemic, that becomes a really difficult position to be in because you have to maintain your professional demeanor, but at the same time, you're personally concerned for the welfare of these people that you've worked so closely with. So this guide was a way to take state and federal programs and really we created step-by-step directions for how to apply to each one, how to troubleshoot problems. It would be updated a couple times a week online with waiting times. Any information that came in, as we all remember in the beginning of the pandemic, we were kind of, stringing it along. And so as data would come in and timelines would change, we would update that guide online. In the center is our temporary outdoor dining permit. We made it as easy as possible. It was hand delivered by our building inspector to each of our restaurants. There was no fee. We brought a map. He filled the map out for them. We set up the location for them that was going to be the most advantageous, that was the safest for their customers, that would work with them, and that would add back those seats that they had lost indoors. That allowed them to continue through the end of November. We extended that to any day that the weather is good. They're allowed to maintain their outdoor dining facilities, and that will go ahead in the spring. We're working now with our zoning department. John Herring is our zoning enforcement officer. He is a fabulous asset to the team. And we have a zoning working group subcommittee, and they are looking at long-term changes to our zoning regulations, but also short-term changes. And the benefit of this subcommittee is they have an integral understanding of the challenges that our businesses are facing. So it's not just about how do we make our zoning regs work. They're understanding that this is what we have to do to keep our businesses here. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see PPE. That was very difficult for our businesses to get. Initially, we were working with the state and we were getting PPE deliveries weekly. We were distributing masks. We were distributing thermometers out of my office to our businesses. And then as the expansion of reopenings continued, it became very difficult. We are home to 4 dentist offices and 4 physical therapy offices. And the cost for a single dental office to provide his staff with PPE was $15,000. So whatever we could do to help out in that way, we did. And just getting people the resources that they needed. We kept a list of companies that had available stock, and we offered help any way that we could. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see our 2 guides, our retail guide and our restaurant guide. These were updated almost daily. They were put out on the web. We had some boxes that we purchased that are often used by real estate agents to leave real estate flyers out. We left those in front of town hall, in front of the police station. People could stop and pick up these guides. They told them who was open, and they also told them how to do business. We all, I think now know you put on your mask and you go in and you sanitize your hands. But in the beginning, it was really scary for people to go out and to go into a retail store or to go out to a restaurant, even to do pickup. So these guides had no limit on number of words that our businesses could add to them. Being digital, that was great for us to be able to make them 5 or 6 pages long as we had to. And our businesses would give their customers a step-by-step guide to what to do, how they could socially distance in stores, how they could order for curbside pickup, how they could order and have deliveries brought to their home. It made our customers feel more comfortable, not to be embarrassed about going into a business or saying they were a little nervous about maybe eating indoors and wanted to do takeout. And for our retail stores, they could change their hours. They could really adapt their business model to what the community climate was. Sadie, I'll have you go to the next slide. So some of the specific campaigns we did, in addition to the guides that we would put out for the fall and now the winter, we're doing what I call the Step Inside campaign. I go out to these businesses, I ask them the products and services that they would like to move, and we photograph the business, we photograph the individual product, we give people the contact information, and our businesses are great about taking a phone call and putting an item aside and going out to somebody's car with it. So on the left, you'll see Goddess Farm and Cider Mill. That was done on the weekend before, I believe the weekend of Thanksgiving. And in less than 24 hours, we had 1,801 people reached. A lot of our businesses report that the items featured in these posts are sold out. So things along the bottom that sold out immediately, winter boots sold out at Quonset Surplus Store. We have coins and gold. The jewelry was flying off the shelves. They have a lot of really beautiful items that are reasonably priced, and it was a great way to get a beautiful gift well presented. Board Narrows Pharmacy had a supply of kitchen items, and they would work with their Stonewall Farm supplier, and they would put together custom kitchen baskets based on customers' price. and those flew off the shelves. And then Mizzy Cosmetics, who's one of our manufacturers. Mizzy did a pop-up shop in front of their store. They sold their products, but they also reached out to other artisans and other retailers in town and allowed them to put tables out as well. And so it was a great community event. It was a way for people to see each other, but at the same time, it was a way to get their product out. So this Facebook page has really been integral to this. As soon as the pandemic started, I put out a guide to e-platforms. Very, very few of our businesses were doing any kind of e-merchandising other than Mizzy Cosmetics. And so things like Shopify and Wix and even Facebook Live, I put out tutorial pages for how to do them. So Savvy Swap Consignment did both a Wix platformed site, which they are continuing to run even as the store is reopened. And they do a Facebook Live on Tuesday night. Our Facebook Lives now run anywhere from 150 to over 200 shoppers. They are not only coming from Portland, they're coming from across the state, so it's catching on. So it's been a benefit that although this started out as a way to kind of provide them a financial lifeline and meet their fixed expenses, it really has become another revenue stream for them. So some of the businesses are really discovering ways to merge their different sales platforms, and it's been a positive. I'll have you go to the next slide, Sadie. So our promotion for January, starting in 2021, is 06480 to go. It looked as if this pandemic was going downhill in October, and I really fear for the restaurants. We hear all of the numbers, and we've seen the Save the Restaurant campaign. What scares me the most in a town of 9,400 people is our population makeup. So we are fairly well balanced. We are one of the few communities in Middlesex County scheduled to grow over the next decade. We have really added a lot of amenities to attract young families, and it has worked. So our number of young families is growing, our number of children is growing, and our number of millennials is growing. The sad thing is that 83 million adults in the US have reported having difficulty paying for essentials like food, housing, transportation, and medical care. And millennials were most likely to experience a pay cut. These are the people that use a lot of the restaurants that we have in town. We have mid-priced restaurants with trendy food. And so this is a way that we can prop them up. So the 06480 to go program, in the upper right corner, you'll see our business cards. On the back of those cards is a list of every restaurant in town with their phone numbers, and our restaurants will begin giving those cards out with every order on January 1st. We have promotional materials printed that will go out, and we also have an online display that will go up on our town website as well as our Facebook page and be shared over social media. It's as simple as spend $25 or more at any restaurant in Portland you can eat in, or we're really promoting takeout. Take a picture of that receipt and you email it to me at Town Hall, or you can send it to Facebook, or you can drop that receipt in the box that we have behind Town Hall with a phone number on it. Each week we'll pick a winner, and that winner gets a $25 gift card to one of our restaurants. We're hoping we can continue this program until the weather breaks and outdoor dining is available again. Each of our restaurants, we've purchased a $25 gift card from, so every restaurant will have a return visit, hopefully from a winner. And it's just a small way to really build on the relationships that we already have. So for 12 years, we've had a program called Community Partners, and it highlights the donations that our businesses give to different programs in town. And this is a way to build on that. I'm hoping that our residents will remember that the dollars that they do have to spend, if they're spent in Portland, then it supports their own programs. And that really is the focus of this. When you look at the income that has been lost, we know there's going to be some drop in sales for our retail shops, for our restaurants, for our personal service and our professional services. So trying to keep those dollars in the community is really the goal. Sadie, can you go to the next slide, please? So looking ahead, again, the goal is to keep those dollars in Portland. The brick building there is Brainerd Place. It's a 240 unit residential, about 112,000 square foot commercial project that is in the heart of Main Street and on our Village District. They plan to move ahead with construction starting in early spring of 2021. We have a contract with Starbucks, and I believe it's CVS, and they're working on a few other retail contracts. It's going to be a lot of infrastructure to start with, water, gas, sewer, roadways, lighting, electrical, and what it's going to bring is jobs to the community. So those construction workers that are coming to that job site, I'm hoping are going to eat lunch and shop in our stores. And we just need to keep the economy moving ahead. In the upper right corner, that's our brownfield site. It's a little over 5 acres on the Connecticut River. We received a brownfield grant to remediate those 3 asphalt lots you see. Those blue tanks, the beautiful blue tanks, if you've ever traveled the Connecticut River, will be no more after New Year's. So construction is starting on that site. We have a company that will be coming and dismantling those tanks, and the remediation will start. Again, that's going to bring a couple of teams of contractors to the site from now through at least July. And hopefully those people will, again, use our restaurants, use our retail stores, and help to kind of boost the economy as until the summer season comes. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see Northeast Performance Institute, which is a PGA golf training center. They opened mid-pandemic and they did incredibly well. Portland is very blessed that we had really focused on outdoor recreation. One of our promo items is a Get Out campaign, and Get Out is get outside. We have the Airline Trail, we have 6 marinas, we have 3 golf courses, we have 2 driving ranges, we have a riverfront park, we have the Brownstone Exploration and Discovery Park, we have the Aragoni Winery, which is a winery that has a very small indoor component and is really focused on outside. One of the things we put together this summer was a QR code and a trail app for the Airline Trail. And when you downloaded that app, it gave you a map and directions and menus and contact information to all of our restaurants. So it was really vitally important that we kept the outdoor component moving this year. And then finally, in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see our newest brewery, Concentric Brewing. We are very lucky to have only lost 1 full-time restaurant and 1 seasonal restaurant. And both had indicated prior to the pandemic that they were looking at winding down their businesses. We have 2 new restaurants scheduled to open in 2021. We have the brewery opening before the end of this year, and we have a new Dairy Queen under construction in addition to Brainerd Place. So going forward, we're looking at continuing to provide supports for our local businesses as we have with different promotions and with support on the technical end to make sure that they can take advantage of the programs and services that are being offered on the state and federal level. But also we are pushing these construction projects and these openings to just drive new dollars into the economy. Thanks, Sadie.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary and Susie. You know, you've clearly been doing some amazing work in your communities, and I know your businesses are better off for it. So, you know, thanks a lot. So now, keeping their examples in mind, I want to touch on some key activities that you all can be taking on in your communities over the next several months. So, you know, I think one of the most critical roles that you all can take in supporting your businesses is engaging them and listening to them. So, you know, make sure you are in constant communication with your businesses because you want to be knowledgeable about their needs and about the ways that you can provide them support. So, you know, when you're talking with them, first think about whether there are actions that you can take locally to address their needs. So, for example, I'm sure that many of you have likely, you know, amended your zoning regulations or, you know, altered them in some way in response to the limited indoor dining capacity. So allowing for some additional outdoor dining as a result of the governor's executive order. And that's just a great example of, you know, something that a lot of towns have done to support their businesses locally, you know, or if you're hearing that a bunch of businesses are struggling with a certain grant or loan application for some support in light of the pandemic, you know, coordinate a virtual training for your town's businesses on the ins and outs of that application. You know, and beyond that, for what you can address locally, make sure that you know who the local, regional, state, federal level resource providers are and what they do so that you can point your businesses to those organizations as you are engaging with them. So whether that's SBDC, SBA, SCORE, CIC, your local or regional chamber of commerce. You should have a good understanding of what the landscape is of business support organizations. So very much tied into my last comments, you need to think about ways to get your businesses the technical assistance that they need to make it through this pandemic. So SBDC and SCORE are really great organizations for providing this technical assistance. So again, make sure you're familiar with them and the services that they're providing. One major thing we should be thinking about is helping businesses without a current online presence get online. So as we all know, the pandemic has led to big increases in the prevalence of online shopping and people just using the internet to get information on businesses. So those businesses with an online presence, they're able to be more resilient as a result. So I really can't stress enough the importance of an online presence. And I definitely recommend either doing a group virtual training on how to create an online presence or working with businesses individually to set them up online or even, just sending them to groups like SBDC and SCORE to help them along. And another piece of this resiliency puzzle is helping businesses pivot so that their products and services are more appropriate for the needs of their customers right now. So, for example, a lot of restaurants started offering family style to-go meals just to meet their customers where they are and for the types of food that they're wanting to purchase right now. So, just be thinking about, other ways that you can help your businesses pivot to be more responsive to the needs of their customer base right now. And then finally, thinking about undertaking some type of shop local initiative. So, of course, we know that the holidays are prime for shop local, and, it's definitely going to be more challenging in early 2021 after, that holiday rush has subsided. But you can try appealing to community members, by messaging around helping the small businesses in the community that make your community special survive the pandemic. Really try and pull at the heartstrings with your messaging. I think that's a great way to keep the community members engaged. And the drill. I mean, make sure that you are promoting shop local on social media through your town's online presence, just to spread this messaging. And also think about engaging the community in other ways. And I know that Mary and Susie both touched on a lot of these, but, do events and promotions, make it fun for the community to be engaged and shopping local. And also to boost consumer confidence, make sure that all your businesses are being very COVID conscious. So implementing all the safety precautions that they should, and make sure that you're marketing to that to the community, because they need to know that businesses are taking the pandemic seriously to want to go and shop at those businesses. So when you can encourage your businesses to offer curbside pickup and delivery options, as an added COVID related measure that will, hopefully draw in some additional customers. So I just want to end on a positive note. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Now that we have a vaccine, our businesses have a much better sense of a time frame for when things might start to return to some semblance of normalcy. And I know this will be a huge help for a lot of businesses as they put together a plan for getting through the next several months. So just do your best to help them hang on, as vaccines start making their way more to the general public, because there is definitely something to look forward to later in 2021. So with that, we have come to the end of our presentation, and I will pass it back to Kim.
Thanks, Sadie, Susie, and Mary. Wonderful, really, really great information. We do have a couple minutes left, and so I want to get, people have been really good about commenting using the chat box today. Sherry has a question for Mary and Susie. To keep track of what's happening at or in your businesses, what method do you find is best to capture that information? So what kinds of methods do you use to stay in touch with your businesses?
Well, for me, Susie in Old Saybrook, I find walking into the business and talking to the business owner directly, or sometimes a phone call. But even phone calls sometimes are not returned because folks are busy. But if you're walking the street and going into businesses, and if you can chat with the owners, that's often getting a better sense of how things are going than trying to do surveys and such, because I find responses to surveys are really, really low. Mary?
Same thing. I get out as much as I can and get in the door with them, whether it's our restaurants or our retailers. But I do keep a spreadsheet, and it's kind of neurotic, but I keep a list of all my businesses and the best way to contact them, because sometimes there'll be a business that you may not be in touch with for a while. So a lot of my businesses, they love to be messaged on Facebook. They're very into social media. You can message them on Facebook. Some of them, it's a post on Twitter, says simply give me a call. But a lot of it is walking in the door. With my restaurants, I tend to call and leave them messages after hours. So they hear them first thing in the morning, and I'll give them my hours for the next day and say, give me a call. It really is just, again, I said, we're a small community. So it's the personal touch, but it's sincere. And I think Susie's the same way. We know our business owners, and we know the best way to keep in touch with them. For a lot of them, it's walking in the door. For some of them, it's an email. And for some of them, it might be social media or even a text.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. For those of you that had a question about geofencing advertising, which was discussed, well, we've put in the chat box a link that explains geofencing and what it is. But Susie, it was you that talked about geofencing, right? Do you want to talk a little bit more, fill in the blanks a little bit, either about how you set that up, how it's going, how the businesses are responding to that tool?
Okay, so we have a local marketing consultant who has helped us out very inexpensively for the town because he's a local resident. And he has the ability to put us as a town on, he got us started with geofencing, which, like I said, could be cost prohibitive if you're an individual business trying to get into it. And there have been other, sometimes the newspapers will offer some opportunities there, but this is, we feel, a better opportunity because it's something that the marketing consultant set up specifically for us and for the businesses. Geofencing, when you learn a little bit about it, it's a little frightening how invasive it is and how targeted your advertising can be. Not only can you target people in specific areas, geographic areas where the name comes from, but you can also target by demographics and by, shopping habits and that kind of thing. So it's highly targeted. It is reliant, though, also on people who use their mobile devices. So a cell phone ID is captured in geofencing and then is followed, and your advertising then goes to that ID. And it's measured in impressions. So all of you probably have been shopping online before, and you go to a certain site and then you leave that site and you're on Google and you're reading Reuters in the morning for your news, and an advertisement pops up on the sidebar. And it's the website that you recently visited. It's exactly the same. Geofencing is exactly the same concept. It captures an ID for your device and then sends ads to you, but it's based on the fact that you were in a specific location and fit certain demographics. So it's highly targeted. And we found that it's also very easy to track. You can follow exactly where people are going. So we've done geofencing campaigns. Last year during the holiday season, we were targeting people who went to the outlets around us and to other shopping spots around Old Saybrook. And we targeted Shop Local in Old Saybrook advertisements to those IDs. And we were able to track those ID numbers, those ID devices, as they came to Main Street. So we could tell how many people received our ad at the Clinton outlet and then arrived on Main Street in Old Saybrook. So it's a very effective in terms of being able to track what your advertising is doing. And of course, you've got to weed out how many people actually live in town, which the system can do for you, because it can determine, believe it or not, whether or not you are at home, because that's the place you land most often. And if you're going to work and then coming home, it identifies a location that you go to during the week as a work address if you're going regularly. So it can weed out those people who actually live in Old Saybrook and might drive along Main Street, and it doesn't count those as your advertising hitting them and then return to Main Street. So it is a pretty interesting tool in terms of being able to determine how effective your advertising is. And for us, we've been able to buy into this because of the marketing consultant that we've had. And he was the one who recommended that we expand it to the businesses. And we've already been able to track the success of the 4 different businesses that have used it. We can see how many people have seen their ads, clicked on their ads, and gone to their websites. So, and like I said, we're going to follow up and see if how many of those then became converted into sales.
Awesome.
If
Awesome.
if anyone wants more information, please call me. I'll be happy to share information with you. I can also put you in touch with our marketing consultant, and he can share information on how he's able to do this if anyone else is interested in doing it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Susie. I know that we're coming up on the hour right now. Obviously, you can see up on your screens the contact information for all 3 of these wonderful, wonderful professionals. But once again, a recording of today's session will be available on our website, ctmainstreet.org. And we have a great deal of information on there, no matter what stage of revitalization you're in. For instance, and Sadie talked about this, the importance of an online presence. You can access our Reopen Downtown video series that was produced for us by Arnett Muldrow and Associates. These are short videos that can be watched at any time and shared with your local businesses. Topics include how to establish an e-commerce presence, social media for both small businesses and for Main Street programs, tips for health and beauty businesses, and effective retail photography. Those are just some of the topics. So we encourage you to visit that. And Judith had put in the chat box a link to that spot on our website. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, January 12th at 10 a.m. Where we will feature Jason Vincent, who is the president of the Norwich Community Development Corporation. Jason will address vacant property strategies, examining the complex reasons why properties are unused, the critical importance of market alignment, and expanding your toolbox to bring vacant buildings back to life. Thank you so much for attending today. Please help us by completing the evaluation you're going to get shortly in your inbox. And we'd love to see you on social media. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And please, most of all, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Thank you so much.